so that you're aware, and it'll say that we're live. We're live. Hey, everybody. How are you doing today?
I'm happy. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to see you up close and personal.
Yes. So Judy and I collaborate a lot on the phone and over email. And so this is the first time we've been face to face with each other. And just as I promised, we are in week 3 of bringing our experts of our members here at Lead Up for Women forward to everybody in the community so that you guys have the opportunity to tap into them as an expert and for them to be able to share their advice on what's happening based on, I like to call you light leaders. So I really believe that many of us are called to be light leaders and hold a lamp. And when you're holding that lamp, there's a specific lamp that you hold that is your creative genius, Judy, which I'm going to have you talk about in a minute. And it really helps those that are currently suffering in silence or in the dark and not sure what to do. They can gravitate towards you and you can lead them in that direction. So this is our number 20, which I'm really excited about. It's a great
Wow, congratulations.
Wow. Thank you for being here. And we're going to keep going. I've even, we're running a promotion. So we ask, sharing is caring. So we ask everyone who does, watch these videos, just click share and put it on your page and share it because you never know who might need this message.
Yeah, and I don't know if you can even give it stars. I guess you can't on Facebook, but I know when you do podcasts, that helps people to say, oh, we want to listen to her.
Yeah, of course, right? Yeah, well, I mean, why wouldn't anyone want to listen to you, Judy? So let's talk a little bit about you. Will you introduce yourself to the community and talk to us about why you're so awesome?
Well, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. And I do feel like I am called to be a light bringer. So I really am grateful and excited to be here and honored to be here. And also I feel like for a long time, I've known women are rising right now and we're so needed in tandem with men, not against men, but in tandem with them so that we can balance out a lot of things. And I feel like I've been preparing for this time for years, literally decades, knowing that something was coming and it's just getting closer and closer. So I'm actually the CEO of a company called Lifework Systems. And so that kind of sounds like it fits with trying to help people. So hopefully if you're one of the suffering, and all of us are suffering. I have my ups and downs, which I'm typically a pretty optimistic person, but it's a really strange time for all of us. And I think it's really important that we examine who do we really want to show up and be. So my company is designed to help create a world where all people love their lives. And by create a world, we mean, how do we create conditions and conversations where people really are treated in ways that they need to be strong and resilient and handle whatever comes at them. And you can kind of see right now how well people are doing and how well they're not. Even before the pandemic, we were addressing a lot of companies that would have fast growth, that they were getting into a lot of pivoting or digital transformation, or maybe they were going through mergers and acquisitions. And all of those things kind of show our stress cracks.
Yeah.
So the pandemic just puts us all in a similar set of conditions. And what I love, not about the pandemic, but what I love about what we're doing is there are certain conditions and conversations that should be occurring with people for them to feel really solid about who they are and to feel that they are safe and secure to live a really bold and brave life. And I don't think we realize how unsafe we feel so often with one another. Yeah. So I read something recently that really hit me, that if you bought a new dog and you treated that dog really, really well, within about a week, that dog would do just about anything for you. It would go jump in front of a car for you. But with human beings, even when we've set up the ideal conditions for them, it takes them about 6 months of consistency for them to trust us, which is really pretty telling, that they've been hurt a lot, that they've been, mistreated a lot or neglected a lot. And so that's really what, in the work that I'm doing, it's based on the psychology of Alfred Adler. And I just read a book about him last year, and the authors are from Japan, and it's called The Courage to be Disliked. Because Adler was not as popular as Freud and Jung and some of those psychologists of his time. But part of it's because he would have disturbed the power structures. And so the authors of that book said that he was at least 100 years ahead of his time, which puts him about right now. in his particular model. And so what he's doing that's so important is he was saying, if we don't understand what keeps people out of shame and inferiority complex, which Brene Brown talks a lot about that, we will go into uninterrupted struggles. And those aren't even just struggles between us, which it is included, but also the struggles within ourselves. And all of that tears down our ability to be resilient, our ability to be creative and innovative. And so that's where I'm excited that the need is here, not that people are going through pain, but that it's a real opportunity for them to find true happiness. And I don't think we find it doing the same old systems we've been doing.
Yeah. I mean, you hit on two things for me, Judy. So I want to circle back with those real quick if I have permission to do that.
Sure.
Which is the conversations, right? You talked about the power, not being afraid, or the power to not be afraid to be disliked, or be afraid to be disliked, which was the name of the book. You talked about culture a little bit, was what you're referring to, and you talked about the conversations. So, I come from a corporate background, and I wouldn't say all corporate companies are transparent enough to be okay with having those conversations that need to be had at the table. A lot of times they're had in offices behind closed doors, and not always are the people involved that need to be involved in the conversation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I actually love that you use that word, because I think a lot of corporations try to be transparent. But I wrote an article that said when transparency can become a bloodbath, because if you don't have if you don't have certain kinds of ground rules with people, where you've eliminated gossip and you've created a place where having a really strong relationship between people is the number one foundational priority, why would anybody want to be transparent under other conditions than that?
Trust is huge.
Trust is absolutely huge. And most people want to be trustworthy and they want to trust others, but they actually don't even know what comprises trust. And this is kind of how basic a big piece trust is in our model. It's the foundation for under being a responsibility-based culture. So that would mean if I had an issue with you, Colleen, I would ask you every day or whenever I'd see you that we were meeting specifically for this, I would say, are all your relationships at a 10 where you don't feel like there's anything to resolve? And then I might say, Colleen, are we at a 10? And if you were to say to me, well, not really, because you promised me you would do X, Y, and Z and you didn't do it, or whatever it was, then I would have the opportunity to say, thank you for letting me know that. How about if I do this to make up for it? Because now I've made our relationship more important than anything else. Yeah. And most people are afraid to even go to somebody and say, are we at a 10?
Right. And that goes back to my next point, which would be safety. So with truth and transparency, for someone to trust, right, want to tell the truth, and have that transparency, they have to know they're safe. And
and I think the basic main thing that people are not safe in, that they don't even know they're not safe because of it, is like fish in water that don't know they're in water, is what's called the control models. So our control models that we have in our homes, in our schools, and in our workplaces are things like being an autocrat, do it or else there's going to be a punishment, or withdrawing, or withholding, or, or you're going to get slapped on the wrist.
Fired.
One way or the other, you're going to get in big trouble. It's also things like dangling carrots and saying, if you're a good person, you'll get this extra thing. It's also shaming and praising people. So if I were to say to you, Colleen, I'm so disappointed in you, that would be my attempt to pressure you into doing what I want you to do. Or I could say, Colleen, you're my favorite, keep doing it, keep making me happy. And it's all about you people pleasing, right? And then I could even try to enable and pamper you and let you off the hook in ways that aren't good for you, or tell you 20 times to do something you already know, which people are doing like crazy. And those are all weakening your sense of safety, because none of those hold beliefs that are positive about you.
Right.
So imagine how terrible these managers feel when they have to let their people work from home right now. And maybe they don't have this structure that isn't using control. So for many people, that's a new concept right there, is, wow, I have to dismantle these incentives and shaming and praising. What am I going to do instead? And so we call that spitting in the soup. We're going to spit in the soup of those control models until people realize how harmful they are. And then they can bring in good tools, because you could bring in the best tool in the world, but if it's put in on top of control models, it's not going to help anybody. That makes sense?
Yeah, it's dismantling the control model. So I was just going to ask you, now that we know your genius, now that we know what you do behind the scenes, right? Now that we know what you're a master at, how are you helping companies right now? Because they have, a company who's used to being under one roof, everyone's working together, right? You've got all these control, like you talked about, the control models. Now they're all dispersed. And people are working from home, or some have been laid off or furloughed or whatever's happened. Who are you working with? What advice do you have for either the executives or the CFOs or the managers or whomever, the vice presidents, what would you give advice to the employees, or the executives, that what is important for them to focus on now during this?
Well, I think for me, the same things that have always been important are just more obviously important. For example, let's say you're a manager and you think that 40 or 50% of your team aren't functioning because they're not being policed. Well, you probably don't have high functioning from them at work either. You just didn't know it. You thought you had some kind of control over it. But either way, you'd want to know through asking for certain results and seeing whether they're showing up, and then finding a way to give them what they need in order to start being responsible. So our model is actually called a responsibility-based model. And we've already been prepared for these times, not necessarily the pandemic per se, but we have already geared up for all this digital transformation and people working from home. So in our world, that's an easy thing for us to help right now. Even with you, Colleen, doing this virtual summit. I think that because I've wanted to do that for so long, it was pretty much a no-brainer to pull it together and just go for it, because I've already been using the technologies. I've already wanted to simplify conferences and summits and make it possible. One of the things that I see in old school thinking in corporations is that it's all for the high performers and the top level people with titles. In our model, it's CEO to janitor, it's CEO to frontline staff. And that's a lot of executives haven't wrapped their head around that. They still think, well, that's going to be too expensive, too time consuming. It isn't nowadays. It's no more time consuming or expensive than everybody having a cell phone or a personal computer. So I would tell executives it's time to focus really on personal responsibility anyway. And this is kind of forcing the issue.
I love it. Do you kind of see, I kind of visualize like everything crumbling, right? Kind of down, and then here you guys are as pillars, just still standing strong. Like, we've been here the whole time. You just didn't know we were here.
Colleen, that's what I'm seeing with my clients. They're writing me. One of them is in the healthcare industry, has over 1,000 employees, and they wrote me and the COO and said, I cannot even begin to tell you how amazing our teams are. And part of it is they've learned so much about managing themselves, their relationships, their productivity, their engagement, their plans, that they're weathering this even in healthcare. So it really is important that people see winners in order to feel like they can trust dismantling. Because you're right, it is a dismantling, and some people are going to go kicking and screaming about that. They don't want it to be dismantled. I even have people saying, why can't I just be a person that you tell me what to do?
No, I understand.
Put your big girl pants on,
So if you are a CEO or a COO or an executive, and you're feeling nervous or curious as to if you felt as if you had a strong culture before, maybe you thought you did, right? And then with people being displaced, you're realizing maybe I didn't, maybe they didn't have the right direction to work on their own the way I thought they did, or that self-responsibility, and motivation to do, like you talked about, being about the personal responsibility, versus it being the responsibility of things being taken away from, or carrots being dangled, or whatever it is. So I would encourage anybody who is at that level to reach out to you, just to have a chat with you, to find out what could your company offer my company in helping all of my employees establish this rock solid culture, and these control models, moving forward.
Well, I think you're bringing up something that I think the executives will probably, hopefully, perk up in when I say this.
Yeah.
Our world is complex everywhere. Our technologies are complex. The way that we're moving forward with, AI and digital transformation, all kinds of things, speed of change, globalization, diversity. It's all complex. But what we haven't realized is the same complexity is also true of human systems. And what most of us rely on are systems, like the systems that get us around using our cell phones, or those satellite systems, or our transportation systems. So systems are really critical, but most people don't realize that only about 8% of the population create systems to begin with. And less of that crowd create human systems. So what I would encourage an executive to consider is, most executives that are reading anything current, they're seeing the trends and evolution of culture. They're seeing the trends and evolution of agile, for example. And what they're really asking now isn't what culture should I shift to as much. What they're asking is, how do I do it? Yeah. And so when we help companies, we build a very specific, detailed implementation framework, which means that we give people the answers to how do we do it. And it's not as simple as somebody just taking a weekend or week-long seminar. It's a very stepped in, assess, set targets, really change the internal behavior, have everybody in the organization participating in the management of the new system. It's a very switchover thing. So I think executives, I would say to them, you're probably doing an awesome job, but if you really want a systemic change, you need a system. You need a system approach. And I would just encourage them to look at, what is this framework Judy Ryan is talking about? Even if I decide to go build my own, at least I'll know what a framework is for a culture transformation.
Yeah.
So
we talked about it a lot. Now is the time to really, if you've got the extra time, now is the time to look at, how can you pivot? What can you add? How can you continue building on your foundation? And, your people are really, they're your assets. They're your most important assets. And, go ahead, Judy.
Well, I was just going to say, and they need techno-human. They need to be able to use technology in all aspects of their life, including their culture change, but they also need that human. So how do you blend techno-human ecosystems? Most people don't know how to do that. A lot of people are still kind of afraid of technology in general. And then
they don't know how to do it because they're not really sure what the components are. Maybe they do pieces of that, but they're not really sure how to consistently make that connect. Sure.
Yes, and you need somebody that knows the best practices around, how do I appeal to the people at home that are auditory, that are visual, that are kinesthetic, that like to work, they're extroverts or they're introverts, and all of those components working in an effective framework can really be a huge relief to executives, and they shouldn't feel ashamed that they haven't known how to do it. That's what I see more of them doing. They're almost afraid they're going to look at it.
Well, you don't know what you don't know. No. And just because you're in charge doesn't mean you know how to do everything. And I doubt that CEO can go around and do everyone's job in the entire office. You hire experts to do what they do best, right? That's why you're hiring them to be an expert in your company.
Well, and these human systems, we should have all been learning these in grade school. These emotional intelligence skills, these ways of building trust and being personally responsible. Most people were not taught those. And then they go into the work world and they still don't know how to manage relationships and all of that. So the executives, I feel for them, because I believe most of them want to empower people and help them be good, responsible people, but they haven't had a lot of success when they try to transfer that responsibility to people.
Right.
And so if they had a way of doing that and seeing other people pick it up, I know where the psychology that we're using was used in prisons. The repeat reincarceration number, which is about the same as our disengagement number in companies, is around 70% nationwide. It went down to 4%. And that's the same that we're seeing in our companies. When people stay the course in a culture transformation that is truly responsibility based, the amount of loss of profitability and loss of employees and all of those kinds of things are dramatically different, not just a little bit different. So
retain happy employees. How do you do it? Right. This is the key. Well, thank you, Judy. I really appreciate that. And I'm again encouraging anyone, her information are in the comment section below. We're going to be adding all of that. So if you're watching this video, you can just go down to the comment section and get in touch with Judy that way. But I wanted Judy at the end here, before we wrap up, to just mention a virtual summit that we've been working on and bringing in many, many, many female experts to be able to lead a virtual summit. So I just wanted you to talk about the name of it. And of course, we'll put the registration information below. But I'm very excited on April 20th to be able to bring this to not only the lead up community, but to females around the world.
And Colleen, I just got to give you props. If it wasn't for you being the catalyst, this wouldn't have even happened. She's like, can you pull this together in a week? I'm like, sure, no problem. And it was actually so much fun.
And you did it. And it's awesome. And this is going to be amazing.
Yeah, I love it.
Right now is the time when we all need to come together and get out there and
absolutely.
And we don't need motivate, inspire.
Yes. And feel hope. So this is actually called When Everything Falls to Pieces. And there's a picture of a fan. We're going to put our landing page up there, but it says, do you have a stable foundation when shift hits the fan? so shift
you guys know what we're talking about. Yes.
Yeah. That shift is extra hard right now with the pandemic.
Right. This was a huge shift. And do you have the proper processes and procedures in place? I mean, everyone knows I come from franchising, 18 years of process and procedures powerhouse is what we were. When you're in franchising, you just got to repeat, rinse, repeat, right? Brush, rinse, repeat. That's just the way it works. So I love that this applies to everybody out there. It doesn't apply to just a corporation. It applies to an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, in all of our different industries, because it's very important that these processes are in place.
Well, and when you're talking about processes and procedures, you're a systems thinker, Colleen. Yeah. So all of the women involved in this summit, they're bringing a systemic kind of solution to people. And that's really hopeful. And all of them are going to have handouts, and all of them are going to have offers to help people after they go through all this amazing information. So it's really, if you don't have a stable foundation, all the hard work and all the dreams that you have are more likely to fall apart. And that's why we wanted to help. We're really thrust into this awareness that we better pull some new things together. So yeah, I'm excited to be part of it. I'm excited to know you better, Colleen. I appreciate you inviting me today.
Yes. Very exciting. I always say, surround yourself with good people. And so what I've been doing through these last 4 weeks is actually the last year since Lead Up for Women's been rolling, is surrounding myself with good women. And that's how we thrive. That's how, and I lead by example to show other women that you can be successful and lift other women around you and put them on, platforms and pedestals and share their message and not be in competition, that we are so much stronger as females if we all work together as one team.
Yeah, and I believe it's your intention that got me going. And I think our team has shown up to be highly collaborative, highly cooperative and supportive and encouraging. And I think you have a lot to do with that. So I'm grateful for you, because a lot of women do need to see strong, powerful women that are there for each other and not against each other. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. And if that's the main charge I'm leading, and I will be the lamp holder and I will hold the light for women to be able to follow me out of the darkness for that one. So we're excited. We'll put all the information down below. And Judy, I'm excited to collaborate with you more. You know that. I absolutely adore you, and you have so much to bring corporations. So for anyone watching this video, please share this information. Sharing is caring, and we want you to share with other people that you don't know that maybe are suffering in silence.
Yes.
Need to hear this message today. Yep. And we're all trying to figure out what to do. It's unprecedented. Let me just break that down. That means we've never been through it before. So give yourself some grace. Understand that things might fall apart a little bit, but it's always not about what happens to you or what happens in a moment of time. It's how you come out of it. So how do you want to be coming out of this pandemic? How do you want your company to be? How solid do you want your foundations to be able to shift and pivot and change so quickly in a moment and it not shake the bottom line of your business? Right. So I recommend now's the time that you start utilizing all of these experts, taking their advice, and not shrinking back, but really investing in the things that you need to be investing in to grow yourself and to grow your business and create a solid foundation.
Yeah, and Colleen, I would also say that when people know that they can be kind and compassionate to themselves through this, they don't have to be so worried if they're going through a change process and worried like, I obsolete. No, you're going to become more modernized. You're going to become more valuable. You're not passe. You're not past your time. And I wish I could just say that to everyone, because I think people think, oh my God, if I change, I won't keep up or I'll do it poorly. And no, don't be afraid of it. It's really your future.
Yeah.
No matter what
I
age
love
you are.
that. What a great message to leave us with. So thank you all for joining us. I know this was a long video, but it was a lot of important information. So thank you for hanging out with us. And Judy, again, thank you for being with us. You're such a pleasure. So thank you.
My pleasure too. Thank you, Colleen.